Bridget Michelle back with another flight attendant video. Thanks for returning. I really appreciate it. Let's jump right into it. So today we're going to talk about scheduling and your pay. I want to help you make a good, informed decision about whether or not you should become a flight attendant, and if you are, who are you going to work for? So again, as I talked about in the other video, you have major airlines, charter airlines, regional airlines, low-cost carriers, military airlines. It just varies. But everything you do, and this is pretty wonderful, everything is based on seniority. So whether or not you're asking for days off or vacation or building your schedule when there's certain trips that you want, whether you'd rather go to Detroit or LA or whatever. Again, everything's based on seniority. So when you're building your schedule, okay, you'll either have, let's say you're looking at your calendar, right? On some days you're going to have off days where you're completely off duty. The company cannot contact you, or even if they do, you don't have to answer your phone because you're off. Then you have days where you're actually on reserve. When you're on reserve, that means you're on call. Then you have days where you have a line, which means that you have a schedule. Now, your schedule could be one of these things or all of these things mixed together. It just varies. Again, depends on the airline. Now, reserve also refers to a person. So you say, okay, you're looking at the reserve list. How many reserves are on call today? So you might look at the list and maybe there's 100 reserves. That's, if I'm on call, that means I'm a reserve. So, or you, like I said, you could say you're a reserve or you're on reserve. Now, the length of period to being on reserve, again, varies. With some airlines, you do your time and then you're out. So say, my first regional airline I started with, I was on reserve for about a year. And then once I got in line, I never went back on reserve again. It was great. So I started having a schedule, knew where I was going, life was good. With some airlines, you're on reserve for a few days per month. And the rest of the month, you have a line. And then you also, again, as I said, you have your off days. They have to give you a certain amount of off days. We'll get into that in a second. And now with some airlines, you're actually going to be on reserve for a month at a time. You'll also have your off days. And then the next month, you might have a line. Now, once crew scheduling calls you, you have a period of time. You've got to get back to them in a timely manner, usually 10 to 20 minutes. Again, it varies by the airline. Once they call you, when you call them back, you're probably either going to get a trip, a definite trip where you know where you're going. Maybe you're just going to New York and back. Maybe you're getting a 2-day trip. Maybe you're getting a 3-day trip, which includes, 3 days away from home and 2 nights. Or you might get airport standby, what they call ready reserve. It's different terminology depending on the airline. This means that you put on a uniform, you go to the airport, you wait, and you stand by. You have your phone. You're either waiting in the airport or you're actually waiting in the crew lounge or the crew room. Again, your terminology always varies by airline and that airline's culture. So once you've gotten your trip, so you're gonna, let's get into pay. This gets so detailed, I'm just not even sure where to go. But anyway, your pay, most airlines are gonna start at about $20 an hour. Now that is not $20 an hour like you're used to for a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 type job. What this means is a flight hour is from the time the door closes in your originating city to the time it opens in the city that you've flown to. So say I fly from here in Atlanta to New York. I'm going to get approximately 2 hours of flight pay for that. Even though the flight is only going to be about an hour and 35 minutes, give or take. It depends on your headwind or tailwind. Tailwind makes you go faster. It's coming from behind the plane. Headwind slows you down because it's slowing the plane down. It's coming from you in front. Depending on either of those things, depends on the time you're going to take to get there. Now, on top of your flight pay, you're also going to get per diem, what's called per diem. That's for food, basically. And it's for every hour that you're away from base. So let's say I have a 3-day trip. I'm going to get paid anywhere from $1, $2 to $4 per hour just for my food. So on a 3-day trip, I can typically make an additional $100 to $200 extra pay just on my per diem alone, and that's not even including my flight pay. You also have, depending on the airline, you have other types of pay like flight leader pay, where you're the lead flight attendant in charge. You might have purser pay, where you're the leader of an international flight. There's galley pay. There's pay for the flight being full. All these things vary depending on who you're with. You also have a difference in pay and schedules based on whether or not your airline has a union or whether they don't have a union. We'll get into that in another video because some folks are anti-union, some folks love the union. Just kind of vary. I've actually worked at airlines that had one and airlines that didn't have one. So you got a lot of pros and cons there. Let's see. Let's see. So you learned about your off days, your reserve days. Oh, Federal Aviation Administration, they rule. So whatever your airline's rules are, actually the FAA trumps them. So they have to do what the FAA says. And the FAA says that as flight attendants, we will get a day off for every 7 days of work we do. Now, this day is actually 24 hours. So your airline may give you a full day off, or they may literally just give you 24 hours in between and keep you working. Let's talk about how long you're away from home. Again, depends. If you're at a charter airline, you tend to be away from home a little bit more, 2 weeks to a month. Omni, for example, for instance, you may be gone up to a month. They do charter military flights. If I'm wrong, anybody correct me, because these things change all the time. So with most other airlines, though, you're typically gone 3 days, maybe 4 days, maybe 5 days. It just varies. Sometimes you just get a simple turn and you get to come right back home. The term turn, TURN, means that you're just going to a city and then you're coming right back and then you're done. Easy breezy. Some people like them, some people don't. Personally, I don't care for them as much because the per diem that you get during the day is not as much as like if I were to do an overnight trip. I also really enjoy the hotels, the nice hotels we stay in and the nice overnight. So I prefer, if I'm going to drive all the way to the airport or commute to work, that, I want to have a little bit more time to be there and enjoy my trip. Let's see. I got to keep this really short. So again, your pay, you're going to get a raise every single year. You've got your flight pay plus your per diem. I'll come back with some more subjects in the future. Again, thank you so much for visiting. Have a great day.